What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? BizzyDad here, you there, and this is the first episode or edition or whatever you want to call it of a new segment I want to start putting on the channel called Ask Bizzy. And really, it's just when I talk a little bit about myself, give you guys a little bit of an inside look at me. I also answer some questions that you guys leave either in the comments or the direct messages. I get some there too. The discussion has always been really good in the videos, and I really appreciate all my subs that take time just to drop a little comment. Mostly positive. I would say I get like 95% positive comments. 5%, you know, some people are just negative. Some people just want to stir the pot. I get all that. So I guess it is what it is. But really, the vast majority of people in this community and my subs and people who post comments, even those who don't sub to me and post comments, the discussion is really good and really positive, and I like that. So I wanted to just kind of, I don't even want to call it give back, I guess just kind of answer your questions and just be a little bit more interactive with you guys. So I do have some questions that I have from all the subs that I've gotten over the past couple of weeks. And I will be doing another episode of this. So if you have any questions that aren't answered on this episode that you want to have addressed or you want me to speak about on the next episode, please leave a comment below with your question. And we'll get that answered as soon as possible. So you see on the mat right now is Rezard, the Undead Lord, and that goes into the very first question. What is your favorite color in the game? And it is darkness. When I first got into this game, I've been into this game for almost a year. I started when Twilight Wanderer came out in 2016. So I know it just turned 2017, but so I guess you could technically say last year. Twilight Wanderer was out, and that's when I stumbled upon this game at what is now my local game store. And the first thing I ever bought was the Darkness starter deck, which was Rezard. So this is literally the first card I've ever owned in this game. And it was tough to pick up at first, but as I tell people all the time, you'd be amazed at how easy it becomes to learn the game and become comfortable with it. Sure, it's very complex, but just really getting those basics and then building it up from there. And now it's a game that I really enjoy, and I really think about deck building and card combos all the time. So it really is a fun game, and I encourage anybody who's not sure about whether they should get into this game, buy a starter deck and just try it out. They're not that much money, and if you don't like it, you could sell it. You could sell the deck, you could sell the cards. People are looking for some of these starter deck cards, especially in the new set, Lapis Cluster starter decks. People really want some of those cards. So, I mean, you won't be out too much if you don't like the game, but give it some time and you will like it. So, yeah, Rezard was the first card I've ever had. Darkness was the first deck and mechanic I ever, mechanic, but color that I started building and playing with. And what I like about the Darkness is the debuffing, the negative stats, and really just that really playing out of the graveyard and negating and destroying was really interesting to me. And one of my favorite combos way back when I first started, Rezard, I'll move you to the side for a minute, is I would play a deck with Vlad Tepes, was really good, and I played a deck with Vlad and no resonators. The entire deck was just spells and additions. That's all it was, and it was incredibly frustrating, and it did so well. So my favorite combo back then, and still one of my favorite cards in this game, is Yellow Sign. A Yellow Sign is an old resonator addition that when you put it, obviously you put it on one of your opponent's resonators, and that added resonator gains -3/-3. So already, just dropping him 300 attack and defense is really good, especially way back, put this on a Lancelot. You can imagine how frustrating that is. But at the end of turn, this card deals 300 damage to added Resonator's controller. So at the end of every single turn, not just my turn or not just their turn. Every time the turn ended, they would lose 300 life. It would deal 300 damage to my opponent because their resonator has the yellow sign added onto it. And you can see how nasty this becomes because Vlad's ability is to pay 2, and this card deals 200 damage to target opponent. You gain 200 life. So picture this. The way this deck worked, I really wouldn't play anything on my turn. I would draw a card, call a stone, and pass to my opponent, and then see what they would do, and then react from there. And the cards in the deck all work differently depending on what they did. But if I got the yellow sign on one of their resonators, their turn would end. They would get dealt 300 damage. They lose 300 life. Then it would come to me, and I would draw. And depending on how many stones I had open, let's say I had 4 open stones, which was very possible. They would lose 3. They would get dealt 300 damage at the end of the turn because the yellow sign's on their resonator. It would then come to me. I would draw, and before recovery, I would spend 4 stones to deal 400 damage to my opponent. So for every 2, they get dealt 200. So 4 stones, 400. And then I would recover, call a stone, and pass the turn. Now the turn's over. They get dealt another 300 damage from the yellow sign, and now I have 5 open stones. They just got hit for 1,000, and nothing happened. So how long can you survive like that? It is really nasty. And I was just drawn to those cards in dark, how it's just, negative energy, dealing damage, negative, 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 into the graveyard, destroy. Just cards like that really made it interesting. And I'm really glad that I started out with dark because it was really strong and really just kept me involved in the game. So the next question is, did you get into Force of Will from any other TCG, or did I just fall in love with the artwork and take it from there? Well, I have absolutely no other TCG experience. This is the first TCG I've ever played, but this question hit it right on the head. I absolutely love the artwork in this game, and if you see any of my other videos, you will hear me say that all the time. And I still say to this day, this card right here, this ruler, the Fiend of Dark Pyre, has the best artwork in Force of Will. I love the artwork, but this artwork to me is the best. It's a ruler for the Cthulhu's, and then the J ruler side is just really, I love it. This to me is still the best, and it's way back to Moon Priestess Return. So you're going way back to the Grim Cluster. This is still to me the best artwork in the game. But to answer the question, yes, the artwork is amazing. I really do like that. But no other TCG experience. When I was growing up, I played a ton of sports. I still play sports to this day. I'm a huge hockey player. Love hockey. I still play once a week with the boys. So just kind of growing up, I didn't have the exposure. It was always just practice and games, and they're playing sports and they're doing whatever. And I was never down. I had never hated card games. It's not like I was against it. I just was never around it. So I never got that exposure or that experience. And when I stumbled across this game, the guy at the shop was saying, "Oh yeah, it's relatively new and it's fun. You can always just get a starter deck and check it out." And I just said, all right, let's do that. And luckily for me, I was with Mike Harley, the guy I always play with on the face-offs. And it was a former Magic player and Pokemon player. So he kind of coached me in stuff I didn't understand in terminology. And I credit him for where I am right now. I mean, it's not like I'm a world champion or anything like that. But I mean, just my comfort level of the game and just how much I like the game and how interested I am in it, I credit that to Mike. So, it was just hit the ground running and just go along with that. But yes, the artwork is definitely amazing. And that's really where we are today. No other TCG experience, but I think I'm living proof that you don't need any TCG experience to pick up this game and have fun with it. So, good question. The next question is, why are you anti-meta? This was a direct message. I guess they wanted to be anonymous. I will say that I'm not anti-meta. I wouldn't say that. I always say that there are other places to go. There are other channels. There are other players that are just a higher level than I am, just way more competitive, way more serious, way more into the world championship scene, and just whatever the latest and the greatest is. And that is not a bad thing. I'm not anti-meta. It's just not my style. I'm way more of a fun casual player, and I'm way more of a player that tries to figure out ways to sneak in cards that you don't see and you don't expect, and you could steal some wins that way. Um, you're gonna, if you ever played against me, you're gonna see cards like this. I'm going to play weird additions and weird resonators and just weird cards that a lot of other people would just look at and just scoff at. They wouldn't put it in their deck, or that's, it's not going to win, or they have their reasons, and that's fine. I'm not against that. And if you are a super competitive player, if you are trying to be ranked and just win as much as you can, go for it. That's not bad at all. I'm just saying that when I build decks and put them on this channel, when I put together combos and matchups against Mike, and well, really, that's the only one I could film against. I don't film against anybody else. But when you see my cards and my decks, it's not going to necessarily be in that direction. There are going to be some fun twists. And maybe that's more geared towards the casual players, people who want to just have some fun like I do. And every now and then, I could put together a competitive deck. I'm not saying I'm against it, but really, for the majority, you're going to see fun cards, and you're going to see a lot of stuff like that. And just make use out of all these cards that you get when you order these boxes and these packs. There are just a lot of cards that, when you take a look at the, I don't even want to say the meta channels, but when you take a look at the decks that are the most used, the most copied, they're not going to involve half of these cards. And, again, it's not a bad thing, but I always say that anybody can just, copy a list or copy a deck. But I also understand that when you get into that competitive atmosphere, that sometimes it's necessary. Will I be playing in the AGP? Well, I think there is one of those stops in New Jersey, and I'll say maybe. I guess I looked at the website and it said that there's to be determined, so there's really no info on it the last time I checked. But if it's relatively within driving distance, and I know I might give it a shot. I don't know. I mean, I would fully expect to go in there and do okay, but who knows? Leave that up in the air right now. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. What is your favorite game mechanic in this game, and why? This is a no-brainer for me. I really love the old Cthulhu incarnating engine. That is really my favorite mechanic, and just a few of the big hitters right here, the big Cthulhus. I love the Cthulhus. Still my favorite race in the game. They brought them back, but I'm not a fan of the new Cthulhu style with the limit. I love the old incarnating and just how all that worked together. Because if you built your cards right and you got the right combinations, you could really put a hurt on your opponent. So for those who don't know, incarnating is basically sacrificing your own resonators to bring in another resonator without paying its cost. One of my favorite Cthulhus is Hastur. Now, this is the original Hastur, and you can see the text here. You can incarnate. So you can either pay 4, 1 dark, 1 red, and 2 of other to play him, or you can incarnate, and that's by banishing either a darkness or a fire resonator. You have to banish 2, and they could be any of those combos, 1 red, 1 dark, both red, both dark. But you sacrifice them, and then Hastur comes in. And when you play Hastur, you destroy a target resonator with no addition on it. Hastur is a really strong Cthulhu resonator. So if you don't have the 4, you can put together a deck where you have fire and darkness resonators to help you out. So I have 2 right here. One is the Rook Egg, and when the Rook Egg hits the graveyard, you get to go search for a fire resonator. The other one here is the King in Yellow, which is a Cthulhu. And whenever this card is put into a graveyard, you go into your deck and find another King in Yellow and put it into your hand. So you have to be smart when you are using this incarnation engine, because you have to get rid of these 2. You have to get rid of 2 resonators. So in order to play Hastur, you get these 2 on the field. You incarnate them off, banish them, and in comes Haster. So Haster gets to destroy a resonator with no addition. So that's a good way to get rid of one of your opponent's resonators. But when the egg hits the graveyard, you get to look for a fire resonator. So you can look for another egg, or you can look for another, you can look for another Haster and put them right into your hand. That's automatic. When the king in yellow hits the graveyard, it says to go into your deck and find another king in yellow. So you get to put it right back into your hand. So even though we got rid of those resonators, they have those replacement effects where we can just automatically fill up our hand and replace them. The original Yogg was a huge beater Cthulhu that took 3. You had to incarnate 3. One had to be dark, so it had to be dark, dark red, or dark red, red, dark, dark, dark. But once he came in, you destroyed all resonators with total cost 2 or less. It completely wiped the board, even your own. But if you incarnated your own guys, then that's not that big a deal. And really just for free, because Yogg is 8. If you wanted to pay 8, you could bring him out. But if you banished 3 of your resonators, you got him out for free. And I really just like that mechanic. I would also like slip in cards like Book of Ibon, because then you can just pull resonators out of graveyards and take control of them. Could be your resonators, could be your opponents. It was a really good way to mess with them. I also use this with the Vlad deck. It would be one of the rare times I would grab a resonator out of there. So really just those old Cthulhus, and Haster was always one of my favorites. So that old mechanic is gone. It's still there in Wanderer, but like I said, the new Cthulhus have limit, and I'm really just not a fan of that. Do I like the changes Force of Will has been making so far since I've started the game? Well, I guess there are some things I like, and there's some things I don't like. But I think if you asked anybody that question, you'll get a bunch of different answers. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. I, for one, don't like the new Cthulhus. I don't like how they're more limit, and they've gotten away from that incarnation. And so, I mean, there's a negative on my part, but also at the same time, I love the remnant cards that have been coming out, the quick cast and the remnants, and coming in and out of the graveyard. I think that people forget when cards like Dreams of Flight or the Bear Magic, that stuff is in the graveyard, and they can come up in a pinch and really help you out at times. But I think the one thing I dislike, and the one thing that kind of bothers me, and I'll explain why, is the Energize on the rulers. Now, some people say, oh, Energize is great because if you go second, you kind of get that advantage back, even though it's just for 1 will. So here is the Fox, the full art Fox, which is beautiful. And you can see it has the Energize. Because it's a green and dark ruler, it can, the Energize is for at any time, you can produce 1 green or 1 dark. You can't produce both, but it gives you that option, the Energize, and you can do it at any time. So that is good in and of itself. But if you go to the rulers from the Frozen Casket set, the set just before, here's Lunya, who can Energize for just 1 red. So a little bit of a disadvantage, because with the Fox, if you run green and black, you're always going to have a first turn play. If you draw just a basic Darkstone, but you have a 1-drop green resonator or a card that you want to play, you can always use it with the Energize if you go second. Lunya, you can only Energize for red. So if you're playing mono red, that's no problem. But if you're playing red-green, for example, and you draw the red stone, but you have a green card you want to play, too bad. Because the only thing you could do is produce 2 red, 1 with the stone you made and 1 with the Energize. And that's not really a huge gripe, but when you see that the newer rulers can Energize for both, there's a little bit of advantage right there off the bat. But if you go back to any other ruler before that, here's Dark Alice, there is no Energize. So that is a complete lack of, I don't want to say advantage, but just kind of like there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? There's no benefit or compensation for going second. And look, here's where the gripe comes in. I wouldn't mind if it was just something along the lines of, hey, that's how it goes, and the game's evolving, and there's not going to be any grandfathered in. And a good example of that is those old Grim Cluster cards that had this right here, enter. So on enter, something would happen. The newer cards say when this card enters your field, and then something happens. Those cards, when they come out of your graveyard, for example, anything with the enter effect does not trigger, because in order for the enter effect to trigger, it has to be played from your hand. But if you took a card out of the graveyard that says when this card enters your field and put it into your field out of your graveyard, that effect still hits. But it was just a mechanic of, hey, this is it. The game's evolved. If it has that enter keyword, it doesn't trigger. But if it says when this card enters your field, it does trigger. The game evolves and you move on, right? Okay, so the argument is, well, what about this? It's the same thing. We had no energize to one color to two color. The game's evolving. I would have agreed with you, except they just had this ascension program in which you sent Force of Will a bunch of cards, and in return, they would send you a new ruler or an updated ruler from the past. Now, I did not do this. I didn't send any of the cards in, but there are other people and channels who did, so you could see the new rulers, a new Priscia, a new Alisaris, a new Fairy Alice. Those rulers were revamped, and they reduced their God's Art or reduced activate abilities, maybe updated their stats a little bit, nothing to where it's going to be, blowing out of the water with a game changer, but they had energized. And that's my issue right there. If you're going to take older rulers from the Dark Alice era that had no energize ability whatsoever, and now modify them to give them that energize ability, you've kind of lost the whole argument of the game's evolving and the older cards just kind of have that disadvantage, because that's not true. Now you have these older rulers in these sets that technically can energize, and they have a little bit better stats or a little bit less of a judgment or God's Art. Like I said, I don't have a problem with that, but the energize is what bothers me, because if they didn't do that, I would have no problem with this progression system. And it's just, hey, if you want that extra energize boost, play these the energized rulers. Okay, fine. But now you've went back and you've taken older rulers, and instead of grandfathering, you've kind of just updated them. So does this mean that now you should just grandfather every single ruler to now energize? No, I think that would be way too overboard. But I just don't like the fact that they took those three specific rulers and updated them with energize. Again, it's not a game changer, and it's nothing critical, but to me, that is just one thing I don't like about the changes they made. So guys, that is it for today. I hope it went well. I hope you guys got a little bit of a glimpse into the madness, which is my brain, with the discussion. But let me know what you think below with some comments and discussion. Do you agree with me? Disagree? What are your thoughts about any of the topics I talked about today? And also, if you have anything you want to ask me or anything you want me to talk about on the next episode, please leave those questions in the comments below. So that's it for today. Thanks for a few minutes. I'll talk to you soon.